plug problem.
All right, welcome back, everybody.
I have a plug problem. Will you help me?
I
Send
mean,
your money and your prayers to my
plug
prayer
problems
ministers.
happen. Plug problems happen.
I think the echo's coming from you, Seriah.
Hang on.
The wind, Seriah.
We're back, everybody, and we've got another set of
blows
three
the
speakers.
stars around and sends the breezes flying. Seriah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Folks were up there dying. Seriah, Seriah, they call the wind Seriah.
Thank you, Alan. I really appreciate
Well,
that.
Seriah, you're never going to get an introduction like that again.
Yeah, and you got serenaded, Mr. Azkath.
You're going to have to do that at the conference before he goes on.
Yeah.
Well, we've got some interesting ideas as to what we're going to do there. Like, I think I will.
And Alan's muted again. So welcome everybody to
use at odd times.
Welcome everybody to the Conspiranormal Strange Realities previews shows. And we've got three more people here that are going to be presenting at the conference. We've got Allen Greenfield, who, you know, if you don't know who Allen Greenfield is, I feel sorry for you. And Wren Collier, and also Seriah, who you can't see, but he is there, we promise.
I am the disembodied voice of the conversation.
Yeah, you're the disembodied voice of the conversation. So basically what we're going to do with this, guys, is we are going to talk about what y'all are going to be presenting at the conference and what we are going to be doing with you guys at the conference. And this is just a way to kind of get people interested in streaming. So I want to start with Wren. What are you going to be talking about at Strange Realities?
Oh, boy. Well, over the last couple of years, I've been really fascinated by there's a weird echo.
Yeah, Seriah, it's coming from you. Just mute it when you're not talking.
Apparently, I mute it when I am talking.
Yeah.
I'm not going to look at you people. I'm going to look at the microphone. So every time it switches off, I'm going to hit the button on my cursor thing, mouse deal, as it's technically known.
Cursor.
All right.
You guys should be able to mute Seriah, right?
I should be muted.
Yeah, you're still there. You're not muted because you don't have the little symbol next to you.
I'm turning my microphone off.
There we go. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, so when I was doing my presentation last year, if people caught that, about catabasis and underworld narratives and sort of Orphic mysteries, I stumbled across a strange element when I was comparing the subterranean fiction of the 1800s to modern narratives of deep underground military bases and Dulcie Base under Archuleta Mesa and firefights with Darrow and tunnels under Cholula Gorge and that sort of thing. And I started to realize that a lot of these stories obviously had origins within the intelligence community. And it has been a question I have been trying to answer for myself over a year now. Like, why those stories? Why were those stories disseminated out into the public consciousness? And was it because myths have a certain power to shape reality and to shape culture? And were there being modern myths created in order to drive culture and society in particular directions? And that branches. Seriah, I'm getting the bad echo. And okay, so I wanted to answer this question, like why these myths, and what purpose would there be to making a whole generation of conspiracy theorists think that the underground was filled with aliens and robots? And part of my presentation is about that. Part of it is about myth as narrative and the magic of creating myth, and how ultimately the line between the imaginary and fiction and reality is a lot more porous than I think people realize. And it's like kind of that combined with the idea from the Invisibles that everything is true. Like all conspiracy theories are true. Every piece of fiction is true. Because there's no necessary clear distinction between fiction and reality at a certain level, when you get to the level of the imaginable. And part of that presentation is going to be going into like my own personal cosmology, like stories about Ingo Swann remote viewing the moon and Joe McMoneagle remote viewing Mars, and the possible like solar civilization that existed pre-humanity and what happened to it and all that kind of thing. But using that to tie into a narrative that, like, in order to inoculate ourselves from the mimetic parasites that are being foisted upon us by powers that want to manipulate and control us, it's important for us to create our own fictions and to create our own narratives that inoculate us against those, like basically idea parasites. And how it's a bit of like a Robert Anton Wilson kind of thing, right? Like, you, by being a true magician, you're able to create your own reality. But not only create your own reality, but destroy your own reality as well, and shift your reality, and, you know, pick and choose what realities you want on any given day, and how important that is going to be for people moving forward.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. Definitely like that idea of the mimetic warfare that's coming. You know, we definitely noticed that with people like us who've been into this shit for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That you know, when you see waves of this after, you know, successive decades, you are kind of inoculated and you can see through a lot of the bullshit. Whereas if you're real fresh and greenhorned, a lot of times you can get caught up in it really easy.
Yeah, it was really fascinating to me. Recently, my sort of eyes were opened by a number of threads by Twitter user Crypto Cuttlefish that I think has gone missing, or is maybe dead, or has left this world. But there were all kinds of threads that he had written about the history of like 4chan and sort of alternative internet community, and how closely tied in intelligence communities were with those early sort of internet communities. And it got me thinking about it's strange because there's almost two generations of people. Like, I remember the old internet, right? Like the internet before major corporation social media, where the internet was broken up into a series. It was like an archipelago of forums, right? And like small groups of people that may only be like, you know, 100 or 200 big. And you had big forums like Something Awful, right, that had thousands of members. But for the most part, the internet was a series of these little islands, little communities that were all built usually around a single niche interest or topic, but you'd form like personal relationships with people within that forum. And how I can't help but feel like the coalescing of all of these disparate internet forums into single monolithic entities, like monolithic social media entities like Twitter and Facebook and stuff, isn't like by design, right? Because it's much easier to control information flows and narratives when you have like a centralized place to disseminate those to all these users, right? It's impossible to disseminate memes to all of these individual walled garden communities that existed all over the internet prior to major social media. And when you look into the people who were involved in some of those early monolithic like sites like 4chan, you start to understand like this is all by design. And there's like an element of trauma-based mind control stuff that I've like been dipping my toes into regarding this, especially with early internet like shock sites like rotten.com and stuff like that. It's like
Taking it back. Oof.
Yeah, it's like almost like you have an entire generation of people who were like exposed to a lot of really horrible stuff on the internet at a pretty young age. And given what we know about trauma-based mind control programs, I don't know, it gets my spidey sense tingling. Like how much of that was by design? You know, how much of it was by design that a whole generation of young men were desensitized to scenes of extreme violence and warfare through LiveLeak, Rotten.com, and other like internet sites? And was that on purpose? That's a little bit outside of
desensitization.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll spit it out eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of out of the scope of like what I'm going to be doing for my presentation, but that's the wavelength I've been on recently.
Gotcha.
That sounds really interesting, Wren. Hopefully it will be as mind-blowing as your presentation last year, which is one of the highlights of the entire conference, I think. So you've got big pressure to live up to that, but it sounds like it'll have elements of that and be really intense and timely. So we're going to
Wren's I add to that. Wren's presentation was one of the best last year for sure. I mean, it was pretty powerful. At least the last like maybe 5 minutes of it were a really profound statement. I thought I didn't know that you were going to go there, but it was very interesting. So I'm interested in hearing this one as well.
Yeah, hopefully
it'll be a sequel.
Yeah, it's kind of the sequel to it. You know, like thank you guys for saying that. That really means a lot to me that you guys enjoyed that presentation so much. I put a lot of work into it. So this presentation's a little less research heavy. A lot of it is sort of just, I don't know, I don't want to say pontification, but just kind of elaborating upon some of the stuff that I was kind of getting into with my presentation last year, at least on like a theoretical level. It's less PowerPoints and more me kind of just, I don't know, kind of going with some of those ideas and running with them.
Being your paranoid self that we love.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You guys get to see what 2 years of isolation because of and
right.
It's done to my brain.
Right. I think that's perfect. There's so much that we could dig deep in on that, and we need to probably do a show at some point with you of just how much of the stuff that you've been, researching and all this type of thing.
Certainly, it looks like we're gonna allow you other guys to speak now. We're sorry, but the audio, Alan, you sound like you're in an airplane, and Seriah's is like feedback, and let's.
And that was the secret of eternal life. But hey,
the final secret of the Illuminati. We missed it.
I must have slipped something into Wren's coffee some years ago because he's too much on the same page with me, and that cannot be because I'm on the Allen fucking Greenfield Jewish Bishop page. Actually, T. Allen Greenfield's sage sometimes comments on MeWe. If ever there was a plant, that's a Q plant, but hey, Facebook kicked me off. Oh, and in today's news, Facebook is royally screwed by the government. Now, how does that work? However, let me say something about Wren's ideas there. The major difference I have is I take very seriously the earlier reports, and Valet, independently of me, has been on the same track since Passport to Magonia, which is you go back to the 1960s and look backwards rather than forwards, which is an interesting take on things in and of itself. You'll find cases of this sort, although culturally defined according to the time that they occurred in, that go back to primordial times. Fill in the blank. There's some evidence that some of the Lascaux cave paintings are of alien visitors, not ancient aliens, but something that is persistent throughout history. One of my breakthrough experiences was Ralph Lale across from Brown Mountain, North Carolina, a place that has a lot of strange stuff going on that sort of validates his utterly screwy story of being taken into Brown Mountain by these creatures and then taken to the survivors of the lost planet Piwam, all of whom didn't believe in clothing, and they migrated to Venus. Well, I went over the story over and over with Lale and without Lale, and then I suddenly realized, where have I heard this story before? Wait a minute, how come Wagner is playing in my head? Maybe because it's so similar to one of the early medieval Mindsinger legends of the Venusberg, and Parsifal going into the Venusberg and meeting the goddess Venus, and basically it's the same story. But Ralph Lale, whether he was a moonshiner, as the man in black told me, or not, nevertheless was not a particularly well-educated person. He was a good old boy from the backwoods of North Carolina, and he never heard of Wagner or Lohengrin or Parsifal or any of that stuff. And yet he was basically, his story in, quote, space-age dress was the same story as that medieval thing. So maybe there are nefarious agencies that have taken advantage of this perennial phenomena and use it, which is what I think Wren actually thinks. I mean, he doesn't think that this started with the U.S. government, because there was no U.S. or government, for that matter, in primordial times, let alone, more recently. So I strongly suspect that this is just yet another chapter in a very, very long story. And the few of us that have looked at earlier cases through that lens are pretty well convinced that this is something that is as attached to the world that we live in, the Earth, the three-dimensional Earth, from the very beginning, maybe even preceding us. That's.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely right there with you, Alan, in that I don't think that it originates with the U.S. government or intelligence agencies or anything. What I think is, like you gave the example there of this moonshiner who had this experience that was identical to a Wagner opera, is that, like, that story that Wagner based that on, my point is that it exists in a sort of state of reality. Like, all stories are real in the sense that they exist in the imaginal, and multiple people may stumble upon those stories and repeat them to other people throughout history. Like, Wagner stumbled upon that story, right? And then so did this moonshiner, right? And they both lived that experience. And I think part of the point of my presentation is going to be about how you can recognize that these myths and legends that have existed since the beginning of time, that have a reality and in the imaginal world that we probably don't realize, how that technology, the technology of myth making, The technology of the Magus, right? Because the point of the Magus is to speak his word, and that word be made flesh, be made reality, right? That technology has been co-opted by people who want to keep us in a cage, because they realize that the most important thing in the world, the most important thing to control is the human mind. And the way you control the human mind is through its dreams and its myths and its legends, because that's how you mold and shape a society. I mean, you can see this on a very basic level with Homer, right? That the poems, the epic poems of Homer shaped an entire culture of people. It shaped Greek culture for thousands of years. And I think that in the 1960s and 70s, when intelligence agencies were looking into the technologies of magic, they were looking into the technologies of mind control, I think that's what they stumbled upon. That, oh, holy crap, if we really want, instead of dosing individual people with LSD, right? Like, this is so much more than that. We can control an entire culture by strategically injecting narrative memes into that culture. And it's even more effective if those memes harken back to existing archetypal legends, like the legend of the descent into the underworld, right? Something that has been with us since probably man existed. How can we co-opt that Orphic mystery and push it into society and use it to guide society, almost like an invisible hand? And one of the major points of my presentation is going to be how we as a people, especially if you consider yourself a magician, if you consider yourself a free person who values your freedom, understand like when those narratives are being pushed upon you, and understand how to create your own reality, like become your own magus, right? Speak your own word, create your own reality, and not have a reality injected into you like virally.
I want to get Seriah's thoughts on some of this. The disembodied voice.
You may speak.
Yeah, so I had my microphone off, so the feedback was not coming from me.
No, it's not coming from you.
Yeah, it sounds good.
So I was really confused because you were saying it was still coming from me and my mic was completely off. My thoughts on all this. That's a lot to give thoughts on. There's so much stuff. I'm curious, what was your presentation last year on?
It was on subterranean mythology, like stories of descents into the underworld and how that has evolved from prehistory into the subterranean fiction of the 1800s, and then later into myths about deep underground military bases and conspiracy culture in the 90s.
Yeah. By the way, Wren, what was the Roy Rogers serial that you mentioned?
Oh,
about it in the
Phantom Empire.
Phantom Empire.
That starred a guy named like Frankie Darrow or something, and it was about it was basically an adaptation of Vril or The Coming Race. Like,
gotcha.
Yep.
So that also leads into the idea of people meeting fairies, so on and so forth, and underground treasure and such.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting topic. I don't really have a lot of thoughts about it. I mean, these two just covered it really well.
So brings me to you, Seriah. What is going to be your presentation at Strange Realities Conference?
The fact that you think I know is kind of amusing.
I think you do know, but maybe you don't know consciously at this moment.
I have some possibilities. It's probably going to be connected to the way that this stuff works like a web, where it seems like it's the same thing sometimes, but it's not. And other things that don't seem like they're the same thing are, as well as like shamanic views on this. There's some stuff on trauma, actually, that might be a part of it. And yeah, so I'm kind of putting it together in my head. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go yet.
That sounds a little bit like, it sounds like yours and Wren's will kind of pollinate each other a little bit, especially with the trauma aspect.
Right. Yeah, a little bit. It's very the approach I'm taking to trauma is very different, but
Right.
it's not it's not the type of thing where it's like, oh, it's either this or that. It's both of those things.
Yeah, I like that, Seriah. I think that's going to be. I think if that's the one that you do, I think that one will be very very interesting.
It's going to go all over the place, and I'm going to try and condense it down so it makes sense.
So last year's the one that you did was more about time and
Yeah,
kind of like the ripple effect and
Yeah.
the idea that an event causes the ripples and you can either go back or forth and how that affects the paranormal.
right. How like a banshee could be caused by someone picking up a future event, and then having sort of poltergeist phenomena associating it because they're not picking it up consciously. So it goes out as a poltergeist event, which then becomes a banshee, and they say, "Oh, somebody's going to die," and it's sort of an indirect communication from the future at that point.
Mm-hmm. Where that person has already died
Right.
in the future. But yeah.
And those emotional impact from the future can actually travel back in time, which is supported by psi research in the lab.
Yeah, you had, was it Eric Wargo?
Yeah.
Doesn't he talk about that? Right.
Yeah, Eric I don't agree with Eric on everything, but Eric has some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know, he thinks the universe is static. I don't, but his reasons for thinking that make sense. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm right. It's just my opinion that I don't think it's completely static.
Well, I think he comes from a more materialist point of view than
Yes.
like we would on this.
Yeah. But I mean, that book he wrote on time loops is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Time Loops was the name of that book.
But
Well, everybody, go ahead, sir.
One of the interesting things he showed too is that like people have future, get information about a future disaster or whatever, and it will match up with the media reports of that disaster versus the actual disaster. So if the media is reporting something wrong, sometimes people will pick up that wrong information. So his argument is it's not that they're picking up this event, they're picking up their learning of this event.
You know, I've had an interesting theory that like the Book of Revelation or some of these like prophetic visions is actually like our movies being broadcast into the past. I don't know. I don't know how serious I am about that one, but I've always thought that was an interesting concept.
Well, imagine if people 1,000 years ago picked up on our culture now.
Yeah, I know. What would they think about it?
Imagine it.
They'd be very confused.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, well, we're looking forward to. We're not quite sure that you're going to be doing it online or whether you're going to be there
online.
or not. It's going to be online.
It's going to be online.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. Well, I can tell everybody when that's going to be.
Yeah.
When I pull up my list here. So, Seriah, you are speaking on Sunday, the 17th, and that is going to be 3:50 to 4:50. And Seriah will be streaming in from New York. So,
and I will set it up so you have a picture this time.
Yes, excellent. Well, last time we did see you.
Oh yeah, but tonight I didn't realize we were doing video.
Oh, okay.
And my studio is not equipped to run video. I mean, it is, but I'm going to be way in the background and off, just slightly off camera.
Would we just see you from a distance?
You would see the edge of me.
That might be even cooler, Seriah.
The edge of you.
All right, so let's go over to Mr. Greenfield, the Jewish bishop here.
In an airplane.
So, Alan, what are you going to be talking about at Strange Realities Conference?
Whatever people want me to talk about. If you folks that are organizers would be kind enough to, I'm speaking, I think, at 9:30 on Saturday night.
Well, you are speaking at 9:20 to 10:20 on Saturday evening, the 16th.
The 16th.
That's Central Time. That's Central Time.
Well, it doesn't matter what. Once I get there, I will be on Central Time. Or And if you think I can keep it down to an hour, you're going to have to drag me off stage. But if you will hand out index cards and tell people I will answer any questions that I have some idea of what the answer is, and if not, I'm really good at taking it, then I will just take whatever questions people want to ask.
We can start that process when the conference begins early. We'll get everyone to start writing their questions down.
While my publisher and I are slowly making our way towards Nashville, you can go ahead and hand them out, because no doubt Olive, a sincere and wonderful person, will be entirely batshit crazy by the time I get him to Nashville, because I'm going to talk, as I am right now, non-stop in an automobile that is rented.
You? No way. You're one of the most quiet people I know.
Well, yeah.
Most reserved. You just,
Yeah, I went out for my run last night, and it was raining. That's the first time that has happened. It's a sign that the season of the witch is here.
Oh, are you going to read tea leaves out of that?
It is indeed. Well, I'm sure that we could definitely, of all the people that are going to be there and people online, I will say for the people that are watching this either right now or later, if you want to ask a question of Allen Greenfield on that evening, please feel free to do so.
And it can be embarrassing. I mean, I don't like to do programs or presentations where I really know what's going to come up, because then I'm not challenged by it, and it comes out like the late Jim Mosley's standard speech, which always began with 9 gleaming objects were over the Cascade Mountains on June 24th, 1947. I mean, it was so predictable that he mocked it off stage, so I like to be surprised. It works well for me.
You hear it, guys. Throw up some curveballs.
Yeah, play hardball, guys. Come up with some hard questions for Allen.
Yeah.
I can mean, have
you ever been a member of the Communist Party? Maybe.
I could come up with a bunch of embarrassing questions if you want. I could just ask you embarrassing questions for an hour, Alan.
I'm accompanying all the Conspiranormal listeners and attendees to come up with questions that you've never heard Alan answer on any other shows, which means I'm going to need you to go listen to every show that Alan has ever been on.
Yes.
Right? Because Alan is a wealth of information, but you have to press him. You have to ask the right questions in order to get the answers you're looking for.
God, this is turning into a love fest.
That's because we just love you, Alan.
Why? None of my wives ever did. That was the problem. But unless we define love in the traditional manner as a, sir, you have an alien on your hand.
No.
You did? Oh, well, gosh, flashbacks. I wanted to comment on the term archetype, because I tend to define it in the same terms as Campbell and Jung, but Jung, a fellow member of NICAP back in the day, always maintained, despite the name of his book in the American edition, Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Sky, he uses the word myth in the same way that Campbell does, which is to say these are powerful experiences. And Jung, I republished a letter that he wrote, about 1957, 58, where he said, look, I'm not saying that these aren't also physical phenomena. I'm saying they resonate with people because they are archetypal, but they're both pretty much in the same category. I'm hearing the wind from... I switched microphones because before we went on, my microphone kept in and out, and I was trying to reveal some secrets, but...
Well...
And fuck the government.
We're streaming this live, Alan. You don't want to get Facebook
Zuckerberg.
down again.
Zuckerberg.
Yeah, Alan,
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Go ahead, Wren.
like, I'm on the same wavelength in that the myths and narratives, I kind of do see them as almost like they exist as entities unto themselves within the imaginal. But also, I think they resonate with people because I think that they are like scars on our DNA. They are so ingrained within us as human beings that they have existed from the first moment that we like looked at the stars on the prairies of Africa. Like, I think that these narratives and myths have always been with us, but it's because they betray a greater truth about our past and about where we come from and what existed in this solar system before we existed. Like, I think that there are like our myths and archetypes are like a map to the history that we have all forgotten. If I'm being a little vague there, but
No. You're sounding Velikovskian, and that's still right. The coffee that I drugged you with must have taken real well, actually. That's pushing me and not being very nice to Wren, because he's a very original thinker. And of course, if you miss his talk, fuck you.
Yeah, don't miss Wren's talk. That's for sure.
Can I say fuck you on a live broadcast?
Well, I think you just did.
Okay.
You can
Well, it
definitely
says
say
right
that on
in-
the show. We don't care about that.
Okay. Well, I already said it, so, and it's
Yeah.
right there on my little byline there. Allen that's the Collier influence. They invented that.
We're gonna get pulled. We'll just get completely pulled from YouTube because of you, Alan. That's gonna be wild.
I don't think so. Fuck is on there, and all the other words are on there, including things that are hypnotic
The
sessions,
algorithm
and they're
is coming for
usually
us.
yeah, and the hypnotic sessions are all from okay, dreamy man, you're now asleep. You low-life male son of a bitch. You people are worms, and I hate your organs of generation. No kidding, those are out there. ASMR is the current jargon for it.
You'll have to get
gonna do
Olav
some
to
of
help
that
you.
for like
Yeah.
5 hours tonight.
I was gonna say, Alan, you might not want to give up your day job in promise of a career doing ASMR videos on YouTube.
My day job is sleeping. My night job is writing books, so I think I'm on pretty safe ground for now, before first they get Zuckerberg, and then they come for you.
So
Not me, I'm exempt. I'm an adeptus exemptus.
It's
That's
kind of
why I've been kicked off of Facebook, kicked out of the OTO, and basically I'll probably be kicked out of Nashville,
yeah. It's a badge of honor.
Stir up power
we're
in
gonna
me. We
take you
get
to the
rid-
Wilson County line and leave you there.
Well,
The Facebook ban is a badge of honor, as far as I'm concerned. It's like the Purple Heart.
yeah, well, going to MeWe though, gosh, I don't ever go to the home page there because it's filled with the Q people. The Q people. It doesn't mean question. It means.
Alan, you give them enough keywords, they're gonna knock us off here.
QAnon is
don't do
a
it, man.
patriotic organization dedicated to the proposition that the government is made up of loonies, and the looniest. He turned my mic off. Censorship. Damn.
Let's go down the line here. I want to thank you guys for coming on and doing this tonight, and also for being part of the Strange Realities Conference coming up October 15th through the 17th here in Nashville, Tennessee. And online, tickets are $70 for in-person and $30 for online. Seriah, we'll start with you. Where can people find you and the wonderful Where Did the Road Go?
Well, that would be wheredidtheroadgo.com.
Haven't been a guest there.
Yeah, you need to have Allen on your show.
Yeah, you need to have Allen on your show.
It's
Alan is a media
Yeah, actually, it's really
whore.
surprising that you've never had Alan on. Now think about it.
It's he broadcasted on Real Radio, Allen, so you can't say some choice words.
Yeah, you know, I've done real radio both here and abroad, and the truth is, yeah, you have to watch what you say there. But thank God for the internet and podcasts in that sense, because
That's true.
we really can let our hair down.
That's right. And anything you want to add there to Seriah to that? To your other shows?
Oh, well, if you like metal, you can listen to thelastexit.org, which is my metal show that I've been doing for like 25 plus years.
It's a headbanger, folks.
Yeah.
Listen to that
Seriah's
show
been
because
doing that for a
Seriah has
long
really good
time.
taste in metal. Seriah gave me all the recommendations I needed for my thrash metal playlist that I listen to when I lift weights, and it is like just the most primo shit you've ever seen in your life. So listen to Seriah's metal show.
And we play stuff that nobody else has that's really good, because that's the stuff I seek out.
He's gonna pump you up!
Yeah, he will.
And Wren, when you're not working out to thrash metal, what are you doing, and where can people find you?
You can read my very infrequently updated blog at Liminal Room, liminalroom.com, which includes some contact info if you want to send me an email. It also includes some links to a Discord server that I run called Lunar Cry, where there's just discussion on the occult and the paranormal. It's like an inclusive space for people who want to talk about that kind of stuff. And some links to some different projects I'm in. But yeah, if you just want to check out liminalroom.com, that's where I have most of the links to my podcast appearances and that sort of thing.
Okay, perfect. And the Allen Greenfield, the bishop.
Okay, I answered the question about what I was speaking on, whatever you want me to. But Olive, my publisher, and I are talking about my doing the Aboriginal version of the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, which I acquired in 1963 on Mount Carmel in Israel, and performed for the first time also in Israel in Yaffo in 2017. So I've been practicing that, and it's quite different from the Crowley version, not surprisingly, or the Golden Dawn version, not surprisingly, because Crowley was a bigot and the Golden Dawn was neo-Christian, sort of, almost, if you squint. And this is right out of medieval Kabbalism, Kabbalistic Judaism, probably originating in Safed in Israel. So I will show the way that it was traditionally done, and I would like to encourage people to learn that version. They're all effective if you give them the right gravitas, but this is more effective. And just like the Latin Mass, when the Roman Catholic Church stopped doing the Mass in Latin, people found out what it was really saying, and it lost its numinosity. However, plug number one, the Complete Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts is still selling well, and there's no reason that you shouldn't go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any of the usual outlets and buy a copy if you don't have one. Otherwise, you'll have no idea of what I'm talking about. And my super secret forbidden book, which was never published before, although versions of it have been in hand-distributed circulation for years, the Grail Within, which includes the ultimate secret of sexual magic, including the well-thought-of scrying in the flesh technique, which is guaranteed to bring, at least for me, bring results. So get yourself a copy of The Grail Within.
All right, thank you guys. I want to thank you all, and I will plug Strange Realities Conference one more time, www.strangerealitiesconference.com. There you can find a link to buy the tickets. 2 tiers available, in person $70, which at this point, if you are in Nashville and you want to come, we are actually checking for proof of vaccine or negative COVID test within 72 hours. So we can keep everybody's...
I will have the booster on the 8th, this Friday. So
Excellent.
I will be Pfizered to infinity.
To the hilt, yes.
Yes.
Excellent. And that's the $30 online tickets. Many of those are available, guys. So grab those up so you can see these great presentations. All right, we will be back in about probably 10 to 15 minutes. We're going to finish this off with Aaron Gullius and Tim Banal. Take care, y'all.
Live long and prosper.